Hello, my name is Anika Leonard, and this is Mason Sarah Vincent.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mason Sarah.
And Mason Sarah is going to be assisting us on the back end. So I wanted them to, like come and say hi, show their face, and you'll be seeing Mason Sarah's brilliance and assistance in our chats.
You're very
All right.
sweet.
Yes, thank you. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to pull you off camera, but you can just,
Gotcha.
yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. This is a five-part series. It's called Crush Domestic Violence. And I really wanted to, I was sharing with Ethelene that I've been wanting to do this for years, like years, and I haven't been able to for a number of reasons. Personally, because this topic it really like it touches close to home, and so there was a lot of like, okay, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? Like all of the things that get in the way of sometimes us speaking our truth. And so with the support of my team, Ania, Mason, Sarah, Lissa, Lawanda, and Ethelene, who, like with Priceless Insight and Alafia, like partnered together. So with the help of everyone, we decided that this is what we're going to do for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is, the month of October. So my name is Anika Leonard, and I have been in the gender justice field for about 20 years, and that's like formally, right? But informally, I've been doing this work for way longer. It's been over 20 years. And I wanted to just basically start off our time today with some libations. And pouring libations is really common in a number of African communities, but also communities of color across the globe have poured libations to honor their ancestors. And so I want to pour libations to not only honor my ancestors and my ancestral roots, but also to honor those who are impacted by domestic violence, the topic that we're talking about today. So this is my first time, but this plant is she means a lot to me. And as you can see, she's purple. Purple is the color of domestic violence awareness. And I'm just going to just begin pouring them. So I pour libations for all those who are impacted by domestic violence, and they're living with that impact today. And after I pour, you can say Ashe or you could type Ashe into the text message. I mean the message box. So I also pour libations for all those who have survived an attempted femicide, and femicide is basically the harm the attempted murder of a intimate partner by their intimate partner. So I pour libations, Ashe. I pour libations for all those who have witnessed the attempted femicide of someone that they love, including young people, because children are often present when femicide or attempted femicide occurs. Ashe. I pour libations for all those who have attempted to interrupt the violence that they've seen either in the homes or communities or workplaces and have lost their life due to interrupting the violence. Ashe. I pour libations for all friends and family who have witnessed the harm done by people who cause harm and are living with the impact of witnessing such harm. Ashe. I pour libations for all survivors of domestic violence who are living with the lifelong consequences of surviving domestic violence. And we'll get into that more. But Ashe. I pour libations for every child who has lost a parent, for every mother who's lost a child, for every grandparent who's lost grandchildren, for every community who've lost community members. Ashe. I pour libation for everyone who has experienced the impact of patriarchal violence and have experienced barriers to either getting the services that they need, the support that they need, due to whatever that has created that barrier. Ashe. Ashe. I felt it was particularly important to pour libations today, because of what we're talking about, right? Like we're talking about domestic violence, and also because there have been so many deaths, and so we're hearing a lot about how people have um, survived domestic violence. We're seeing a lot in the news about like domestic violence incidents, about homicides, about murder, suicides. Like we're seeing it a lot. And I think it's important for us to honor the lives of those who are impacted by what we're speaking about. And right now, I want to honor them with a moment of silence that, shall follow the libations that we pour. So we're just going to have like a 30-second pause and just kind of meditate and take in and say prayers for, or however our spirituality calls us into the space, but to just really acknowledge the lives that we're here to protect and to defend and to speak on. Ashe. So there we go. So I wanted to start with, and we can show the PowerPoint again, Ethelene. Thank you. I wanted to start with asking basically like what is domestic violence? I know that we all have an idea about what it could be. I know that some folks probably have examples about what it could be. But I just wanted to know, is there anyone who is, like watching that basically has a example and or a definition that they like to give us? Thank you, Mason Sarah. Okay. So I'm assuming that there are no comments, right? Um, all right. So I'm just going to move forward with the next slide, which is like basically the definition. So the domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, and or technological actions and or threats of actions. And it's basically a pattern of coercive behavior that is really meant to influence or intimidate their partner's actions. So we have a lot of examples of domestic violence. And we're going to be getting into some of those examples. But I think that I probably should have just kind of went backwards a little bit. I am I'm having a conversation and I'm calling it domestic violence, right? But let me just go back one. Okay, you may or may not be able to see this. So there are three boxes, and in the center box it says our perception of domestic violence. Um And then in the outer box, and it's like ombres of purple, it says actual domestic violence. And then in the largest box, it says patriarchal violence. And so I wanted to kind of talk about like what domestic violence is, because like most people will recognize the words domestic violence, but they may or may not know what the definition of. And some of them may be able to give us some examples of it, but of some forms of violence that constitute domestic violence, but may not be able to go into great detail, and may, like not name sexual violence as a element of domestic violence, but it absolutely, falls in line there. And so I wanted to start there because I think it's important to, like, meet people where they're at. But I eventually want to get to a place where, like, by the end of this 5-part series, we're actually talking about like the impact of patriarchal violence. And instead of saying like, domestic violence and abusers, I will say like people who cause harm, because I think that sometimes it makes it really difficult to have a conversation if we're really trying to label people and not necessarily the behavior. That And so a lot of human services labels the behavior, and people are associated with that behavior and or characteristic, and it's like, like this mark against them. And by all means, I think that we should definitely, have an opportunity to name the behaviors and to identify them, but also have hope that, people can grow outside of those behaviors. And so basically, I'm saying that I have a hope, that people who cause harm in our communities are able to, like educate themselves and work to better themselves so that they're not showing up in the community causing harm, whether that harm is domestic violence, sexual violence, like whatever the harm is. I have hope that we are going to be able to like heal within our communities, and like not carry on the pain of being traumatized ourselves, within the community. So I wanted to just kind of say that because I think I meant to say that earlier. But with our definition of domestic violence, like I said, it is a series of behaviors. And so, actually, Mason, Sarah, if you can add into the chats, because I know that we have some physical examples, right? A lot of people do not know and or understand that if just because you have been intimate with a person who may happen to be your partner, doesn't mean that you have to always be intimate, and that consent is just like across the board. So like a person that you are in partnership with, or in a relationship with, can literally rape you. Like that is possible. And I think that a lot of times we don't think about like sexual violence as one of those things that could be like a part of domestic violence, but it's absolutely used to like control or intimidate another person's behavior, um or influence another person's behavior. So we see a lot of like information out there about physical abuse, but we may or may not see and or understand the impact of emotional abuse. And so with emotional abuse, it ranges from anything such as like oh, okay. Thank you. So, undermining a person's self-worth, like constantly criticizing them, uh, damaging their relationships to their friends or family and or to their children. Like there's so many different ways that people can show up and, like be emotionally harmful. And psychological abuse, we know like these are like playing mind games, and a number of other things. I want to get to technological abuse though, because like I think that a lot of us, like I know pretty much everybody has, that friend who's going to be able to, like type in a person name and find out any and everything about them, right? So we kind of like give ourselves a pat on the back for, being able to like snoop or to like find information out, right? But that those ways that we snoop, or we even joke about stalking and things of that nature, but snooping and putting air tags on people and all of those things are considered technological, or could be considered technological abuse. or harm if it's included in with some of these other things. The thing with domestic violence, or like people who cause harm through violence, is that like it has to be, there's a pattern of behavior, and there's a clear pattern of behavior. So it's not that, one time your partner, said he didn't, or she didn't, or they didn't like your dress or your outfit. And now you're thinking about whether that is emotional or psychological abuse. It is when you see a consistent pattern of behaviors from this person, and you know that those patterns are meant to influence and or intimidate you, and influence and manipulate you into making decisions or taking actions that may not always be beneficial to you. So I wanted to talk about technological abuse, and thank you, Mason Sarah, for adding those in. So this, and we are not going to be able to see it, but we are going to, have like on our social medias, we're going to have the links to a lot of the resources that we're going to be using in this presentation. And so this is a power and control wheel, and the power and control wheel that is specific to the African American community basically shows us a list of things that people can do, and that have been done that are specific to the Black community to cause harm. And so like I said, we're gonna put the links in the chat and on our social media, so that you all will be able to see like what examples are specific to the Black community. And this is an African American organization that created this adaptation to the power and control wheel. And then this is a like these examples were gathered through hearing the voices of people who experience domestic violence from the Black community. So that's where this is coming from. So I want to talk a little bit about patriarchal violence. And in patriarchal violence, we are talking about like a set of interconnected systems, of institutions that are basically in their practices, their policies, their beliefs, and their behaviors, they're showing that they don't value or that they undervalue women, femmes, intersex folks, gender nonconforming folks, and like other folks of the gender oppressed community. And so I wanted to talk about patriarchal violence as a way to, kind of move away from the domestic violence part. And some examples of patriarchal violence is like normalizing things like rape culture, having policies and laws that basically restrict abortion, like that's patriarchal violence. Sexual abuse from faith leaders, that's an example of patriarchal violence. And then having homophobic or transphobic violence committed against members of the community. And then the average lifespan of a Black trans woman being 35, like that is an example of patriarchal violence. Having harassment, abuse, and murder from Black women, I mean, to Black women by police, that's examples of patriarchal violence. So I want to thank you all for joining that part. I'm going to exit out of the PowerPoint and then just kind of talk about some things at this point, because like I stated, I was really interested in doing a live about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But then I also was interested in backing out like a number of times. Every time that I try to get myself to the point where I'm like, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I always back out at the last minute. So this is one of the times that I have not backed out. And I started with some definitions and some examples because I really want to have some conversations in the community about how domestic violence, or how people who cause harm showing up and how it's impacting our community. I know in Milwaukee alone, there were probably like I think it was about six domestic violence homicides in a very short span, like less than 2 weeks. It was like six women who were killed by their partners. And I work on the front end of that. I work with young people who like, like domestic violence doesn't just start when a person is like 30 or 40, like the pattern for those relationships and the vulnerability um in those relationships that leads to a person, like being engaged with a person who harms, like that vulnerability starts way before that relationship starts. That vulnerability starts when young people are exposed to, and when that violence is normalized. So it's not just like, they decided to be 18 or 19 or 20 and now they decide to be in a relationship that is harmful. Those relationships start early, and there have been a number of homicides in the city of Milwaukee that happen when young people are just like fresh out of high school. And I really, 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 really want to encourage everyone. Like, this is the first one. This was like a lot of like groundwork. But it was also just to like help me get my feet wet so that I can like really go hard on these topics like I want to, because it's in me. It wants to come out. um but like I said, this is a topic that is so very close and so very dear to my heart that it's kind of hard to. I have a lot of fear that I'm overcoming. Like even in having this conversation. So starting with the definition, starting with some examples was really good. I'm going to be giving a lot of personal stories, and then also a lot of experiences that people who I've helped along the years, including women, including young people, including people who don't identify as male or young. Like I'm going to have a variety of things that I'm going to be pulling from. And so, like, the rest of these conversations are going to be just that, like, hopefully conversations. So please ask people that you are, in community with, if they could join you. Ask young people to join because the information is going to be totally relevant to them. Check out our programming at Priceless Insight, because we are going to, like, just be showing up, and it's going to be bolder, bigger, and better than ever. So you'll be able to find information about like and resources for people who cause harm and for people who've been harmed. So like I said, I'm just kind of trying to reframe that language from like domestic violence abusers and domestic violence victims, because not everybody identifies as a victim. And not everyone's an abuser for their, like, entire life. So like I said, I'm going to be like kind of um airing my dirty laundry, as you put it, or like as somebody put it. I'm gonna be talking about some of my personal experiences, and they haven't all been good. And I guess that's the thing that like kind of really gets me, like, oh my God, I shouldn't, because like once you put it out there, it's out there. And I think that I need to create some space for us to have like authentic conversations, and I can't create that space unless I'm showing up authentically. So me showing up authentically is like it, it's just gonna be we gonna have a nice conversation. So I don't know, do we have any comments or anything that have come through the Facebook channel or the YouTube channels? Okay, so I'm not seeing anything, and that's fine. Because the thing about it is, once it's out there, it's out there. So we're going to be able to use this as a nice little introductory conversation, and we are going to look forward to seeing everybody next week, Monday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then 8 p.m. Eastern Time, because that's when I'm gonna really get into the nitty gritty. So we'll probably start off with some, like honor and space and pouring libations, but then also we're gonna get into some of the specifics. And does anybody have any questions about anything that I presented in the video? Any of the definitions, any of the examples? Thank you, Lissa. Thank you for joining. I gave you a shout out at the beginning. And like I said, this is really me getting my feet wet because I have a lot to share. I have a lot to share. And, you know, and survivors need safe spaces, or people who've been harmed. We need safe spaces to be able to share our truths too. Um, so, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I want to thank Mason Sarah for being my person on the back end who, is behind the scenes, putting in definitions, typing in our contact information and all of that. Thank you so much, Mason Sarah, for that. And thank you, Lissa, for joining and being of support, and everyone else who's joined. And if you have not joined and are listening to this, like just on replay, or you come across it on your Facebook page, please leave a message. Please go to our website, sign up for emails, sign up for follow us on Instagram, on Twitter. Everything is Priceless Insight. So that won't be hard. Oh, and Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm Anika Leonard. But yeah, thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back next week at 8 o'clock.